No, it's definitely not that. Hey, Federico, can you turn my mic down so I'm not yelling at myself? All right. Nope, down more. I am microphone number 2. All right. Let's call Board of Supervisors to order. As always, let's start with Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And during the moment of silence, think about we had 2 firemen get burned pretty bad last week, and they're recovering, but it's going to be a long road. All right, thanks. Do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. I'd like to add a couple things. Under the consent agenda, Federico, down more. Thank you. I'd like to add supplemental appropriation number 14, and that's for the BDAs. Then, excuse me. What is this? I want to add under number 7, the school cameras.
You want a 7A as old
Yeah,
business?
It doesn't matter. 7A,
Okay.
I guess that's fine. I think that's it. Anybody else have anything?
Mr. Chairman, do you want to add as number 3 also, so you have 2 things that would go with that if the board indulges?
Excuse me.
It's the supplemental as well as the, and we can talk about it more when you get to it, but the agreement between Motorola and Madison County for the purchase and providing of the BDAs. So they kind of go hand in hand.
There you go.
So,
So it'll be a supplemental appropriation number 14, and then the agreement,
We just call it Motorola Service Agreement.
and that's going to go under, I guess we'll do consent, but we can talk about it for a real quick moment.
Okay.
you want to just pull that one out of the consent?
I don't know. I don't think so.
They go together.
Let's
Okay.
do it, let's put it in the consent, and then we'll make a second motion for the agreement. Does that work? Everybody?
Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody else? What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as modified.
Good.
You need an iPad to do that?
All
I
right,
know where that's at.
all right. Public comments. Public comment.
It should be in that test work.
Good to see you,
Give me a
Kevin.
second.
Y'all-
We didn't vote on it.
No, excuse me. Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Public comment. Any public comment? Good to see you, Kevin. Welcome Gracie back. All right, we'll do it again later. Consent agenda. We have minutes from 1/08/2025, minutes from 1/14/2025. We have supplemental appropriation number 13, which is for 2056-20 for a sheriff's vehicle insurance claim. And then we just added with documentation that's been provided, the BDA's supplemental appropriation number 14. Jonathan, do you want to talk, does anybody have any questions on the minutes for supplemental appropriation number 13?
Sir.
Jonathan, please, would you talk about number 14, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the board for allowing us to be added. This is kind of a moving target. You may recall, Mr. Gordon, on a couple occasions, we spoke to you all about the opportunity to apply for this federal COPS grant to fund the bidirectional amplifiers, which are enhanced equipment to help with radio signals inside the schools. So we all applied for it. We were awarded that money. We do have that in the county's coffers. Subsequently, thank you, struggling tonight, maybe we should use a different word. We still had to wait on the service agreement and getting the appropriate language between Motorola, because they would be the provider of this equipment, as well as have legal review that. So that review has been done. They've made the changes that Hannon has suggested. Primarily, there are standard forms we use, like drug-free workplace and discrimination-free and all that. That goes into our standard contract, as well as approved a form section for our county attorney. So we do have that in hand. That service agreement is for $417,000. I know your supplemental says $450,000. When we applied for the grant, that was an estimate where we thought we would land. You always round up a little bit and add for, some contingencies, if you will. At the end of the day, whatever you do not expend would need to go back. So, but being that the $450,000 is already in the county coffers, that's why we're asking for that supplemental for that total amount. So you do not have the service agreement in front of you. I'm sorry, we got that late this evening. Legal has reviewed it, but essentially lined out the equipment and cost for each school where the BDAs are going, but it will not exceed the $450,000. It'll actually be for a little over $417,000. So again, the money is there, but staff would not move on signing a contract without the board authorizing staff to do so. That's what we're asking for consideration tonight, is authorization of county administration and county attorney to sign that agreement. And then the chairman will have some other language of suggestions on, unless you want me to go into that approach.
You're gonna help me. For the actual supplemental, I think it's real easy, number 14. Money's in hand. There has been some federal, discussion on some of these different appropriations from the feds. I think that our motion for the county administrator and legal to sign, should be contingent upon,
Clarity from-
clarification from the feds. And they won't sign until that clarification is out.
So, and essentially, as some of you may be aware of, I know Supervisor Yao deals with federal funding and all, there was a recent pause on some federal funds. So this is already awarded. I don't know how this will, shake out, but we did give some notice on that. So, to the chairman's point, we would wait on that clarity. That could happen tomorrow. It could happen, by Monday, but we certainly want to wait for that clarity from the federal government before we would execute those documents. Your authorization here tonight, so you choose so, would give us that ability, if that clarification comes, to sign those documents and transfer that money to the sheriff's account.
The concern is whether or not the feds may do a fallback, and then, exactly, and then in turn, whether or not we would be on the hook since there is a signed contract. The BDAs are public safety, and should be paramount to all of us, but they'll do the right thing, and we can go from there. Further comments, questions, what would y'all like to do with the consent agenda, excluding the motion for the signatures?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
point of privilege. Is this motion, the consent agenda, is that motion is understood that it would
Yes.
authorize staff, but it's
No.
pending clarification? Are you
No,
going to do that
that's
separately?
separate.
All
We're
right, my
doing
apologies.
2 sets of minutes and supplemental appropriation number 13 and number 14.
All right, thank you, sir.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, now we do need to authorize, Jonathan to sign that contract and, legal to sign that contract, Hannon, pending clarification from the feds.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. No special appearances, no public hearings. Mr. Weekly, talk to us about Hoover Ridge Farm.
This is old business. I was hoping to have our report back from the insurance company. We have not. So since our last conversation, the Vacor insurance adjuster did come out on site and took pictures, viewed some of the interior and exterior of the Red Barn. So waiting on that report to see what they deem, any payout, anything of that nature. We did have one of our engineers who's under a professional service agreement with us, they had to come out to talk about the Hoover Ridge project, so we did ask them, since they are a PE, to look at it as well. So what we anticipate, hopefully by the next meeting, is we can bring you the engineering statement as well as the insurance adjustment. And then you all can make a decision on the status or how you want to address that issue with the barn. So that's all we had to report at this time on the barn.
Comments or questions on the barn? I went out there today, it hadn't fallen anymore. And Jerry and his people, they're very minimal amounts of stuff that is in there. They have contacts with some people to repurpose the wood. We'll go through those options when we know a little bit more. Everybody good? All right, moving on. Speed study process. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my apologies, Board. Normally I provide board reports, but some of these things are literally one or two sentences, is why I kind of saved some of the packet, if you will. A few months ago, when we talked about speed studies, and it kind of led into conversation with the board about, is there a process? Do we need to establish a process? Last week, both Brian and myself went down to meet VDOT, talk about rural rustic type of programming, but took the opportunity to talk about this item. Essentially, the way we're going to treat this moving forward, unless the board has a different prerogative, whether a citizen calls us with a VDOT with a speed concern, or they call VDOT, VDOT will push them our way. We will ask, they would prefer, VDOT does, that we would have law enforcement to do radar just to get some background data. We can certainly make that request. That's up to the sheriff if they have staffing or the ability. Based on that information, Brian has formed out a spreadsheet where we kind of do some standard type of reporting to VDOT. We'll send that to them, really, if it has certain criteria. What is some certain criteria? Initially, they were looking at miles per hour, so you've got a posted speed limit, anything that's 10 miles per hour or higher. But I do think there are other things that factor. One of the roads I was talking with the engineer this afternoon, take the section of Wolftown Hood Road. They did a speed study there, I think at Rock Hall Church, or up that area. But essentially, the speed limit's posted as you approach the Wolftown Mercantile Store, it's 45. And there is some concerns, folks driving 55 mile an hour. I think the median was 52, but there were some that were recorded well over 60 mile an hour. Between the townhouses there in that intersection and there's several single-family homes, the driveways are stacked there. I know residents have shared concerns about even getting out of their driveway safely at their current speeds. The engineer had asked, is there any certain outcome the county's looking for? You know, essentially, if someone's driving, if you show data that says people are driving 55, should the speed limit be 55? And I argue, no, it's already unsafe for people to pull out of 45. So, moving forward, if it has criteria of 10 miles per hour or higher as far as people speeding or other safety concerns, maybe there's not adequate signage or things like that, we will pass a formal request over to them to do the study, and then they can come back with the data, whether they need to add stop signs or recommend rumble strips or do a reduction like they did on Etland Road, which was a request from Supervisor Yao. So that is the process, whether that's clear cut or not. I do think that as roads come up, if you have citizens or even yourself concerns, get them to me and I'll push as hard as I can to try to get whatever objective, even though it took us a little bit on the light on 29, I will push as hard to get the objective that the board wants or the citizen would like to see.
Do we have any questions, comments on this?
Now, I will make a comment on that stretch of road that Mr. Weekly alluded to, because I drive that road twice a week, and that is a really, I don't go through there 45, I go through there 35, because it's full of blind spots. And I can just see a child stepping out, a dog, somebody nosing their car out, and if you're coming through there at 55, you're taking them out. You can't stop. So I think that's a real concern. I don't like to slow things down because I like to go as fast as I can, but that is one place that I deliberately slow down because of that.
I appreciate that. And the roads, we had them look at Ellie and Beautiful Run, Wolftown Hood. I can't remember if there was another one, but the data when it comes to speed or different things like that, really it was the Wolftown Hood Road, as just mentioned, that seemed to be the most problematic. Some of these roads, folks just need to slow down, but it wasn't enough, you know, as active with speeding as we saw at the road I just mentioned. So that's the only one we were going to make a request of at this time.
doesn't Ms. Turner live in that stretch of road?
She does. I didn't want to single her out.
mean,
That's
what's
where I
been
got some of
her
my, I got
experiences?
some of my data from her as far as the danger. And
I'm
we've
surprised. She's
got,
two small kids,
we've got
so-
some other county employees, or who work for the county that live there as well, and similar experience. It's, you know, once you put that front tire on Wolf Tunnel Road, you better get it. If you think it's clear, just get it, because they're on you if they happen to come around that curve. So that section definitely, out of all that stretch of road, is, I think, has an impact that warrants review.
Anybody got any questions, comments?
I followed a logging truck out there once. I mean, the logging truck was stacked so high and leaning, like a 25-degree lean. And then just every time we went around a corner, I kept thinking it was just gonna flip over. Right on Wolftown Road, right past Mercantile, the whole thing.
All right.
Safe.
And he wasn't going slow.
Walk truck, all right, anything else on that? You get the laptop?
Yes.
Yeah, oh,
Turn off the mixer on back there.
all right, I'm sure it'll pick me up. Craigoville Swinging Bridge, Hannon, give us a very brief risk comment.
Sure. Well, we'll start with what we all know, which is the county doesn't own and has never owned. The county does not own and has never owned this bridge or the property connected to it. VDOT has said that the pedestrian bridge is unsafe as it currently is. VDOT has told us, they have not told us that this is a necessary transportation right. They've kept it closed for years, which is some indication of their evaluation of how necessary it is. VDOT's not infallible, but they are the trusted agency responsible for building and maintaining transportation routes. I met with Mr. McGetrick to talk about his concerns regarding liability. I value his opinion and his experience. I do not come to the same conclusion as him in terms of liability. I think our exposure is limited. Review the Virginia Tort Claims Act. And I think given the facts of this one, mixed with, there's also not really a solid plan for what comes next, then I think I'm comfortable with the advice that you all are well within your rights to rescind and ask VDOT to restore the bridge. But like I said, the future after that is uncertain, but you are also well within your discretion to leave your prior decision in place.
All right, now I've got a comment on it. Been around that bridge forever, voted to save the bridge. The board has voted on this. We have voted to allow VDOT to do whatever they see fit with that bridge. I see it as either Mr. McGetrick talking about risk. The real thing here is it's nostalgia, is what we're holding on to. If there's huge flooding and stuff, people should stay home and not be trying to cross a river. Seems to make sense. I don't see any reason we should add this back to an agenda in the future until one of us, as a board member, or we see, or as a board, we see it as an issue that needs to come back up. We've talked about it, we've taken a vote, it's a done deal at this point. Anybody see it any different?
Nope, I agree.
All right.
I don't wanna stick by our prior vote, and I don't wanna talk about it anymore.
I think we entertained Mr. McGetrick. We were looking, the county has not wanted to own this. We were looking for some type of solidified plan, which did not come. There's just no reason for us to continue dwelling on something that we've already taken action upon.
So the only other thing, Mr. Chairman, is Sean Nelson. Last I talked to him, I told him that we would get back to him, either me or you, to say, to tell him, because he's willing to sit on everything until he hears back from us.
We, thank you Supervisor Yao, or Vice Chairman Yao. Brian and I ran into him too. He happened to be at Charlottesville, but I even talked to Carrie, what's going on with my memory this evening? This afternoon, about the speed study, and I talked about the bridge, that there were action or updates or anything from the board pending tonight, I would let them know tomorrow.
All right, you're gonna let them know? All
Yes,
right.
sir. If that's the board's preference, I'd be happy to pass that along.
Yep.
No action at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else on that one? EMS renovation project. Brian, tell us about things.
Moving along, we got concrete poured. If this works. Got concrete poured last Friday. We had to blanket the heck out of it so that the temperatures didn't freeze it. It did not crack. Thank goodness the doors on the 3-bay went up. Should be completed midday tomorrow. They ran into a couple issues, but all in all, that's going well. The, the roof on top of that should be going on first part of next week. Lower bays, doors are in. The only thing that's not been done with those are the motor. Bruce's IT team is working on getting the network, excuse me, stood up in that building. My plan is if we can do that quicker rather than later, is to get some of the command staff moved over there and then move the operations at a later date. The 14th is my plan to have everything moved into that building. For all intents and purposes, the offices and the living quarters are done. There's a few punch item lists, but it's not much.
Questions, comments on that one? Looks real good, and should be a great facility for a long time. All right, next, Hoover Ridge project. Brian, go again.
Okay, notice to proceed was given, I don't have that in front of me, was it March 1? February 3rd. Pulling permits and everything now, obviously nothing's been done yet, the weather is kinda getting that damped out, but, should be moving along pretty quickly once the notice to proceed hits on the 3rd.
Well, you got anything on this? All right, next, thank you. Here's my additional one. There's been talk, and I'm sure everybody's heard about it at this point, about cameras in the school zones, speed cameras in the school zones. Jonathan, myself, Brian, the sheriff, Cardi, were you here for that guy?
No, I was
All
not.
right, the guy made the salesman who sells these cameras, he has floated a contract to us at this point. On top of that, he covering cost, and he thinks it's a good deal, and we get additional revenue, and it'd be good for safety because there's speeders in those areas. I think we should do a public hearing on this.
Good idea.
I'd like Jonathan to forward all the information to all of us. Probably need to put it on the website as well. I'd like to have that man come and talk to us on the second meeting of February, and then I wanna hold a public hearing. It's not legally required, but I think this is one that there's the potential for creep. And then in turn, we should listen to what everybody has to say.
Agreed.
And then everybody can hear it the same exact way.
Just real quick, when you do talk to him, or when we do talk to him, Virginia State is trying to take away the funds from that camera,
Yes.
from the county, and so we can only use funds to repair the camera or do the testing. So if it's a money thing, then, which I don't think is right,
No.
then we shouldn't worry about it. If it's a safety thing, and our sheriffs deputies can't handle it, then maybe we do need it, but that's just something to think about.
That, the comment has come out multiple times, and we do like highway safety dollars, where the sheriff will go and, he writes tickets, trying to slow down traffic for everybody. At that time, like first year on the board, years and years ago, he told me it was illegal to use that as a revenue source. It shouldn't be that way, it is solely on public safety. There is a revenue component that goes with this, and obviously, since this company wants to cover a portion of it, there's revenue for them as well. The pending legislation, I understand, does strip a lot of that, and we'll get into that with them as well. I just think a public hearing, we haven't done one in a while, let's do one, see how it goes, see what everybody says. And it should be all for public safety, and that's it. Everybody good on that?
sir.
February 25th?
The public
Get us some
hearing,
information, advertise.
February 25th, 6 PM. Yes, sir, got it.
See what everybody says. Anyone else got anything on that? And Jonathan, will you circulate whatever you've got to everybody?
I will definitely do that. What we were waiting on from that meeting that Mr. Jackson referred to now, there's some outdated equipment on 29 in the speed zone. So, part of the consideration, if you're looking to go this route, what is the cost to upgrade that or replace that? And then who would be paying for it? So I'll give you that information. We have that back now. Essentially, that company would, I think it's like $60,000 or $61,000. They propose to cover that, but again, I'll send all that documentation around. It'll talk about how that's covered in the cost. You know, of course, they'll have a return on, they get a certain percentage of every ticket. I will say, Mr. Campbell, I think is his name, who works for Blue Line Solutions, that's a company, not all companies use Blue Line. Greene County, for example, uses a different vendor. He hit the nail on the head, because the Sheriff Weaver has told me multiple times, even when I was elected, that highway safety is not for revenue. It's about speed enforcement. And I did talk to Mr. Campbell to see if he was aware of the bill that someone dropped at the legislation about speed cameras. I was just thumbing through to see if I can find it right now. Here we go, right there. And he's well aware of that. And I told him that could be, you know, problematic for us. What incentive is it for you to even want to do that if it's going to the state? So hopefully by the 25th, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you'll definitely have the information in advance, but hopefully maybe there's some decisions made on this bill, whether it's going to survive or not. And then if that's part of your decision, so you have that right in the public hearing, we'll get that advertised.
So again, are we talking about the high school only or the Fairground Road too? Said yours.
Yeah, I turn them on. No, it's right now, it's being proposed on 29.
Just 29.
But the conversation didn't really end with it not being on Fairground. Just the initial pass-through was talking primarily 29. The sheriff has done let's call it a speed analysis with somebody else. Found a lot, there's data out there, you're talking, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 in the evening, and they do have all those. Jonathan will send that to everybody, it's real easy to decipher. But the option to put them on Fairgrounds is certainly there as well.
Yeah, because I maintain that Fairgrounds, there's people doing a lot faster than 45. I mean, even I find myself guilty of it. I look down and went, oh goodness, because it's a straight shot, you know. And if you're coming from town towards Pratt, you're going downhill. It's just easy to fly through there. Of course, I'm not usually there during the school times, which all those buses and traffic coming in and out would certainly temper, you know, that. But still, it's okay.
I would like to add that, yes, there's ability if the sheriff, look, this is assuming do you want it or not, but if you were to consider it, there is options to do those other routes if you'd like to be considered. The sheriff has looked at 29 and possibly Fairground. Nothing was said about Waverly per se. This code section, not what's on the screen, that's the horrible bill that's on the screen, is the code section allows for speed zone enforcement for school zones and construction. So as you get that language, just know that the sheriff has requested it for school zones, not construction. But the code does allow it for both.
I know I'm not 100% sure on this, but there's no teeth to a camera ticket, right? There's no points taken, no insurance, doesn't go up.
Basically civil.
It's civil, my understanding. I can't speak to the points. Do you know that, Mr.
No, he
Wright?
said that it does not.
It doesn't go to DMV as far as I know.
Yeah, so there's no teeth there, so what stops somebody with a little bit of money just to fly through and pay his ticket and doesn't really affect his behavior?
And there is,
Well, sure, I mean, I think you're getting into like, is it worth it for me to blast through this thing and pay the fine?
and if they come to court, we had this conversation with the vendor today. You know, the judge is going to hear, especially if they're side with the sworn officer, because the sworn officer has to review this. It can't be just someone that's not a sworn constitutional officer. They would be assessed court fees too, whatever they cost.
There's a lot of details to it. We'll read through it. We can.
And I'll cover that in detail, Mr. Chairman, at the public hearing as well. But you'll have the information in advance. But definitely I can go over that thoroughly with the public.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
All right. Echo Legislative Day. Would y'all like to start, or you want Jonathan to start?
Judd might go ahead and start off.
Stellar company that I went down with. We're all here tonight. I'm new at this political stuff, so to go down and see how the sausage is made was always interesting to me. Curiosity's there. Got to meet with our Mr. Reeves, and you met with
Nick Freitas.
Nick Freitas. So Mr. Reeves, just to see, like, when we got there, they had cameras in his office, or talking about the water problems in Orange, and of course, we just had the water problems down in Richmond, so the bills going through, legislation's going through regarding all that, so he's had 2 different camera crews in there, and we got to wedge ourselves in between the two, and just kind of talk about, there's over $1 billion extra in the budget that was more than what was used for the budget, so we had a surplus. I'm like, well, what do we do with that surplus? And he's just like, it's a one-time deal, and it's all been kind of like parceled up, and we might give a little bit, but we don't know. Orange County's gonna get a lot for the water treatment issues they were having, and I'm sure Richmond will. So just to see that he's working hard, and he's trying to get stuff pushed through, but the general feeling from his office was, and my feeling too, is it seems like they want more centralized control and taking away powers from local government, towns and counties. And so some of these things, whether it be solar or whether it be data centers, those type of things, land use, they want to try to bring that back in-house to Richmond and not so much the county, who we kind of know what's better for our county. And so to see that was kind of like a wake-up call for me. Some of the things that I did, we sat in the Vaco conference after meeting our representatives. And one of the things that really struck me is these data centers, they've got to make more of them. They got to power them different ways. We talk about data centers here, not having enough power to go to certain areas to make that work. Well, Loudoun County was there, and they made in revenue $795 million last year from data centers. And one of the data centers is powered by solar and propane. So I'd like to find out more about that in our county. That could be something that might work as opposed to all the infrastructure we would need for power that we don't have and probably can't do. So there's things like that that I learned, and there's a lot more, but we can go next.
Okay, we could spend the next 3 hours talking about what's happened at the General Assembly, but, to echo what Supervisor Buchanan said, the more you delve into the proposed legislation, I like to compare it to not seeing storm clouds on the horizon, but a Category 5 hurricane. There are bills there to make solar siting, remove that authority from localities, data center siting away from localities, taking certain degrees, depending on which bill you look at, the ability to zone for housing in counties. There was one bill that did die in committee, thankfully, that would have required counties to set percentages, or the state will set the percentages of what classification of housing that you are supposed to have. And that, of course, that's aimed to bringing in more low-income housing. We know that. And some other things on finance. They're back trying to take our local grocery 1% away, which is what, $400,000 or $500,000 a year for us. They also want the authority to cap any increases in meals taxes. But you can read through many of these. It's just the common theme of this, what's coming through this General Assembly. Most of this stuff will not pass in this administration. However, 2 bills that really, really concern me are Senate Bill 917, sponsored by Scott Surovell. He's the Senate Majority Leader from Northern Virginia. And Senate Bill 1401, sponsored by Senator Louise Lucas of down in the Portsmouth area. She's also President Pro Tem of the Senate. These bills will take away a locality's right to determine whether or not there's collective bargaining through county employees and ultimately the school system. Right now, under the code, a county can decide whether they will allow employees to participate in that. Because these are sponsored by the top 2 ranking members of the majority party in the Senate, which will not change composition in this election. These bills are going to come back next year, the year after that, and depending upon the outcome of this year's gubernatorial election, it's going to determine whether or not these bills pass. But it's just a common theme that Richmond wants to take all of our local power away from us, to the degree where decisions are made by bureaucrats in Richmond. We might as well not even have a local governing board. There won't be anything for us to decide anymore. Now, I will echo too what Supervisor Buchanan said. VACO is made up of cities and counties from across Virginia. Red areas, blue areas, and it is phenomenal the lack of partisanship in that organization. We all tend to agree on these things because the local officials are the ones where the rubber meets the road. We're the people that have to deliver the services, the schools, the public safety. We're the people that live in those communities. We know what's better for those communities than somebody in a faraway land that bases their decisions on political philosophy versus citizen needs. And that's what impressed me about VACO is that, you know, the partisanship really evaporates. That's one organization that seems to be extremely nonpartisan because we all are facing the same problems. And the cry that comes from that conference was, just let us make local decisions. Because you can't do in Madison what you do in Fairfax, what you do in Richmond. And the local leaders that's their responsibility to make those decisions. But there is a huge push in a large number of bills in this session, most of which will not pass. The ones that get passed, I don't think they'll make it past the governor. But we just need to keep in mind that this is what's coming down the pike. And if we get collective, I'm not against collective bargaining, but collective bargaining will, as you know, dramatically increase our budget and consequently our taxes. So I am, you've appointed me as to be the board's representative to VACO, and I am planning on becoming more active in their year-round operations, simply because I think there's some very important work that they're doing. Our representatives, as I said, Judd got to see Senator Reeves, and we got to see Delegate Freitas. They both echoed the same sentiments that we've just relayed to the board. So there's some concerns. The other thing that I found interesting from the VACO conference is that they stopped short of really accusing the state government of being manipulative with the budget, in that the revenue projections that are used for the budgeting purpose, they are conservatively estimated on the low side. Makes sense. But VACO has posited the argument that they're maybe too low, which builds in a surplus every year, which is outside of the budget, which gives the General Assembly, hey, we got some extra money now, let's go ahead and spend it. The problem is the vast majority of it they're not returning to us. I think $300 million out of that surplus. And VACO has argued, well, the localities need more of this money. We've got school issues, we've got public safety issues, and the state will say, well, no, that's coming from the state taxpayer. And we're like, but those are the same people that live in our localities. That's where the money originally came from. Why aren't we getting some of that back? Politics is just a nasty game. But I think that we need to be vigilant, and I really appreciate VACO seeing what their work's doing and how we're collectively as local leaders around the state trying to push back against some of these initiatives to take local power away.
That was stellar. I mean, I'll share with you one note. Sorry for the chicken scratch. That's my writing on the handout there at the top. I echo a lot that was said by both Supervisor Buchanan and Supervisor Jewett. If you look at, and this was the additional handout came from the VACO meeting that we all were at, and apparently it was done by this Fiscal Analytics Ltd., but I probably trust them over the folks that are in General Assembly. My keynote of the day on the budget is this right here. If you see in the dark font up above, the introduced budget has $4.73 billion in additional general fund resources for the 2024 through 2026 biennial budget. I made a note because the speaker there said 6%, and I think that's where Supervisor Jewett was going, 6% of that 4.73 of that whole total, 6% will be given as some form of aid back to localities. And that doesn't mean all of Madison. There's over 100 counties and their cities and towns. So, you know, I don't even know if that qualifies as crumbs. But I echo everything these gentlemen said. I enjoyed our time down there. I think it's always good exposure for whether it's our elected officials, appointed officials, to really be down there to advocating. We got to see a lot of our neighbors. I think Fauquier County was down there advocating on some field dirt issues. And those are some of our partners or jurisdictions that are part of our regional commission. So every year we bring you those platform issues. I would like to have this whole stack in advance. That's the thing I'll say in closing, so I'm not holding up this meeting. But, you know, you get down there and all these bills are introduced. I'd love to see a pause period from the cutoff date when they're introduced, which they do have a cutoff date. Give about 30 days for localities to really review these, along with any lobbying effort that localities may have, to really be able to take some stance. As Mr. Jewett pointed out earlier, if you wanted to pick apart each one of these, you'd have to spend a lot of time down there, really a whole week of sitting here and following these through. So I really wish they would take a pause period. You know, a bill drops, there's 30 days before they would, you know, take that up to give local governments a chance. But being involved is key, and I appreciate you all doing that as members. Brian, you had any takeaways, sir, from the?
It was interesting to see some of the bills that were on the docket and see what that would possibly mean for us in the future. Thank you.
I'll make one comment that I think your board will appreciate. Mr. Weekly and I were in with Delegate Freitas, and our time was getting close to being up, which we kept getting reminded of several times by his secretary. But once the group that was pushing us to come in next were Madison FFA students, so we were okay with that. We gladly gave them that.
I'm playing deputy clerk. It's February 3rd. Please get with us, get with me. I know Kim's out sick. I don't know if she'll be in the rest of the week or not, but please get with me. If you want to look at last year's, we can make a copy of that so you can look at that. But please get those to us. I did not ask her of her list of who are remaining. I know we got a few like IDA members that dropped theirs off. So please drop those off as soon as you can so we can get them filed. Forgive me, Mr. Chairman, it's skipped over, so.
And I'm gonna do it anyway. Public comment, Anybody? Well, thank you. We're glad to have you. Dave, you got anything?
Copy of this, sent this out to.
Yeah, I'll be happy to send it out, all planning commissioners and, okay. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. No other public comment. We do have a closed session. Thank y'all for coming. Marty?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that the board convene in a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 for personnel.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Gracie, it is good having you back.
So we'll have